Ever since last year when I reviewed the Asus Chromebook Flip, I've become obsessed with Chrome OS. Google's desktop operating system is fast and simple, and all of that just combines for a really distraction-free working environment compared to Mac and Windows. What I want people to take away from this video is that Chrome OS probably is right for you because it's just good enough for everyone now. I'm Brad Bennett with MobileSyrup, and is Chrome OS right for you? Before I get into everything involving Chrome OS and my overarching thoughts on it, I'll explain how I use the operating system. Generally, I use it pretty similar to how I would use Mac or Windows, but the setup is where things change. First up on Chrome OS, you have to be aware of the app stores. You can download Chrome extensions, Chrome apps, progressive web apps, create shortcuts from websites that are progressive web apps, and download things from the Play Store that are sometimes Android apps and sometimes progressive web apps. It gets really confusing, but I'm gonna try and walk you through it. I'll start with progressive web apps because they're kind of the newest person in this party. Basically, progressive web apps are super high functioning websites. You can save them as shortcuts, and sometimes they offer offline functionality like Google Docs, which lets you work on it without an internet connection. Other progressive web apps like Spotify don't have similar offline functionalities, but will bring like a mini player or something outside of the normal website. Plus, you can open these in Windows on their own, so they look like normal apps as opposed to in tabs in the Chrome browser where they look like websites. Generally, I use these more than anything else because they're sort of the best app-like spaces to work in on Chrome OS. Android apps are also handy to have because they sort of fill in the blanks where these PWAs falter. Like I said, only some of them have offline capabilities, so things like Netflix and Spotify don't. If you want to download a movie or some music for a time you know you're going to be using your laptop outside of an internet zone, you're gonna have to get the Android apps. Chrome extensions and apps are the other piece of this pie, and Chrome extensions I'll start with. They're basically browser extensions. You've used them on Mac, you've used them on Windows, and they act the same here. You know, they'll offer you sometimes features like Netflix Party, which lets you start watching something on Netflix with other people at the same time so you guys can talk about it. Or Grammarly. I have the Grammarly extension to help me autocorrect my writing as I go. Those are extensions. They're not quite full apps, but they are helpful and they work within Chrome. You can download Chrome apps from the Google Chrome Web Store alongside extensions, but generally I found most of these to just be PWAs. The next thing I like to do is organize the Files app. It's generally pretty limited from the start, but you can add a few things to the sidebar and a few subfolders generally within the Downloads folder and the Pictures section to help organize things a little bit. Because it's so limited, it starts to overwhelm you very quickly, so I think having this organization helps it feel more like it would on Mac or Windows. That said, I'm really hoping Google starts to bring more organization improvements alongside a UI improvement to the Files app. What you might have noticed is I didn't really download any creative apps beyond Polar, which is a raw photo file editor that works okay, but is not nearly as good as any of the Adobe apps. And that's because there pretty much is support for no photo editing app. Well, okay, there are a few photo editing apps, but like no video editing apps. There's like really light CAD programming. And I can't think of very many other business specific apps you would need, but it's unlikely that they're here. So if you use something really, really specific for your work, you need to do some research to see if it is available on Chrome OS. And sometimes there are workarounds with the Android apps like I was talking about before and progressive web apps, but generally this is locked down to doing work through the Google web browser. So that's things like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, and other things that you can access online. I know the Office 365 cloud stuff. I know you can access Apple's things online, even though they're not very good. So, you know, there's a lot of functionality here. You just have to figure out if it's the functionality of things that you use or if a specific app is keeping you at bay. And that said, that app might have some sort of Chrome OS equivalent like Polar does for me. The final thing Chrome OS needs is a lot of polish. Google has to put some elbow grease into the operating system to make it look and react better. You know, it just doesn't make sense for a company as big as Google to have these kind of glaring things. You know, you can't swipe away notifications. You just have to hit this little tiny X that's like really hard to hit, and some Chromebooks don't have the best trackpad, so it's just a game of tapping away. Things like that, I think Google will fix over time, but until that happens, I'm still waiting for more polish. Chrome OS is even kind of exhilarating to use. When I reviewed the Acer Spin 311, this really tiny budget Chromebook geared towards kids, it ran almost just as well as the Pixelbook Go or the Acer Spin 13, two high-end Chromebooks that are worth hundreds and hundreds of dollars more. But the fact that Chrome OS can run on lightweight processors and low-end computers is great because you can pick one up for super cheap and it's just fantastic. That said, if you want a better option, you can spend a lot of money and have the fantastic hardware, the Pixelbook Go or the Spin 13 or the Asus Chromebook Flip. There are a lot of options in all price ranges, but they all run the same. That's something you don't get on Windows, where if you pay less, generally the experience is a lot worse because Windows just won't run on low-end machines. So I kind of hope that helps explain Chrome OS to some people, maybe PWAs or what you can do on it. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'm Brad Bennett. You can follow me just about anywhere at the BradFad. You can read my work on MobileSyrup, which you can follow anywhere at MobileSyrup. Thanks.